You are experiencing a gradual decline, not in a physical sense. Your heart continues to beat. Your lungs continue to breathe. Yet a crucial part of you, the most alive, powerful, and genuine part, is being quietly suppressed. Day after day, conversation after conversation, agreement after polite agreement. You are being restrained by something unseen, the expectations of others. They believe you should be married by now. They believe you should already have a secure career. They believe you are too reserved, too outspoken, too driven, or not driven enough. And because you fear the silence that comes with their disapproval, you comply. You adapt. You bend yourself to fit into roles they designed. You have become a performer in a script you never authored, repeating words you do not stand behind, for an audience that does not truly care about your well-being. Niccolò Machiavelli, often labeled as the most misunderstood philosopher in history, understood this behavior clearly. He recognized that the human mind is fragile, hungry for approval, and deeply afraid of isolation. But he also identified the remedy. Many believe Machiavelli wrote solely about governing states. He did not. He wrote about governing reality. And the foundation of his thinking is direct and unforgiving. If you do not govern yourself, someone else will. There is no compromise here. The inner world does not operate by consensus. Either you rule your own mind, or you serve within another person's system. Today, we are addressing this directly. We are removing the dependence on validation that has been conditioned into you since childhood. We will examine Machiavelli's philosophy plainly, not to control others, but to prevent others from controlling you. What follows are 7 principles, direct and uncompromising, that can shift you from seeking approval to standing as a self-directed individual. Understand this clearly. This knowledge is not soothing. It is not motivational advice. It is protection. Once you recognize the mechanisms that have shaped your behavior, you cannot return to ignorance. You may lose friendships. You may create tension within your family. Some will describe you as distant or self-centered. And for the first time, that reaction will not control you. What you gain is freedom. But reaching it requires letting go of the version of yourself that depends on being liked. We begin with the central falsehood that keeps you constrained. You have been taught that goodness equals agreeableness, that moral character means consistently placing others before yourself. You were told that self-sacrifice represents the highest form of virtue. This belief reflects a submissive moral framework, one that benefits others at your expense. Machiavelli wrote, "A man who wishes to make a profession of goodness in everything must necessarily come to grief among so many who are not good." Consider that carefully. If you insist on pleasing everyone, you will eventually be taken advantage of. The reason is simple. The world does not operate on kindness alone. People act from self-interest, pride, and survival instincts. When you place their comfort above your own reality, you enter conflict unprepared. You believe your sacrifices will earn appreciation. You believe that enduring discomfort for others will create loyalty. It does not. Instead, expectations increase. When you are depleted, others move on. This is not bitterness. It is an accurate reading of human behavior. Machiavelli observed that people are often ungrateful, inconsistent, deceptive, fearful, and driven by desire. While you are useful and successful, support is plentiful. When circumstances change, allegiance fades. This is not pessimism, it is pattern recognition. Reflect on your own experiences. Think about the times you agreed against your better judgment. Did that earn lasting respect, or did it become a standard others assumed you would continue to meet? Living for others trains them to undervalue you. It signals that your time is expendable, your limits negotiable, and your presence conditional. You position yourself as a resource rather than an individual. The Machiavellian adjustment occurs when you understand that virtue without strength is compliance. Genuine integrity includes the ability to refuse. It requires tolerance for disapproval. You must learn when not to be agreeable. This does not mean becoming cruel or deliberately harmful. It means no longer being passive. It means directing your generosity with intention instead of offering it indiscriminately. A ruler does not distribute wealth recklessly in pursuit of admiration. Resources are protected and allocated strategically. Your attention functions the same way. Your effort has value. Stop investing it in those who offer no loyalty in return. Choosing yourself begins with examining where your energy goes and why. If your motivation is avoiding someone's frustration or disappointment, then you are not acting freely. You are responding to pressure. Why does displeasing others feel so threatening? Why does criticism, from family, partners, or even anonymous observers, trigger such discomfort? The answer lies in biology. Humans evolved in groups. Historically, exclusion meant death. The brain adapted by treating rejection as a serious threat. Anxiety developed as an alarm system. When you are criticized, your nervous system reacts as if survival is at stake. But your environment has changed. You are no longer dependent on tribal approval to stay alive. Disapproval today does not carry the same consequences. The threat is imagined, but the limitations it creates are real. You have constructed a mental stage. In it sit everyone who has ever influenced you: teachers, peers, former partners, colleagues, and society as a whole. Each decision becomes a performance. You wait for approval. You avoid rejection. Career choices, personal expression, honesty, all filtered through imagined reactions. Machiavelli's instruction is clear: dismantle the stage. Reputation is a tool, not a ruler. Perception can be managed strategically, but it should never determine your sense of self. There is a difference between shaping how you are seen and needing affirmation to function. Managing perception is deliberate and controlled. Seeking validation is reactive and dependent. Once you rely on applause, you surrender authority. To live independently, you must remove the audience. Most people are not focused on you. They are absorbed in their own concerns and insecurities. Even when judgment occurs, it holds no real power unless you grant it meaning. Let's examine the mechanics of an opinion. What is it really? Is it something solid? Can it harm you physically? Can it drain your bank account? An opinion is nothing more than a pattern of neural activity in another person's mind. It is a thought suspended in chemicals inside a skull that does not belong to you. So why allow a chemical reaction in someone else's brain to steer the direction of your life? That is irrational. Machiavelli offers an alternative perspective. Contempt, but not the loud, emotional kind. Instead, a calm, detached indifference. The kind that notices a barking dog and chooses not to respond. When you live for yourself, you treat other people's opinions like the weather. If it rains, you might take an umbrella, but you do not yell at the sky. You adapt and continue toward your goal. You must become the sole audience in your own theater. You write the script. You perform the role. You judge the outcome. If you respect what you see in the mirror, the silence or noise of the crowd is irrelevant. This leads to Machiavelli's most quoted and most misunderstood idea: it is safer to be feared than loved. Love is maintained through obligation, which, due to human nature, is often broken when it becomes inconvenient. Fear, however, is maintained through the expectation of consequences. Remove the political context and apply this principle to psychology. This is not about intimidating your friends. It is about respect. In modern terms, fear translates into respect, while love becomes likability. Most people pursue likability. They want to be agreeable friends, flexible employees, and easy partners. They believe being liked will protect them. It will not. It is a hidden trap. When you prioritize approval, you become shapeless. You lose definition. You turn into a substance that adapts to every container. And people do not respect what has no form. They consume it or discard it. Respect, Machiavellian fear, comes from boundaries. It comes from standards you refuse to dilute. It comes from the quiet knowledge that you are willing to walk away. In social terms, that is the dread of punishment. It is the understanding that your presence is earned, not guaranteed. When you live for others, you fear abandonment. When you live for yourself, others fear losing access to you. The balance shifts. Consider the people you respect most. Are they the ones who agree with everything? Are they constantly apologizing for taking up space? They have principles. They say no without long explanations. They are willing to create tension to defend what matters to them. You may not always like them, and they may be difficult at times, but you respect them. Their approval carries weight because it is rare. Their time is valuable because it is protected. Machiavelli teaches that a life built on likability is unstable. Preferences change. Moods shift. If your identity depends on approval, it collapses when conditions change. Self-respect, however, is solid. To live for yourself, you must accept being disliked. You should even welcome it. If no one dislikes you, you are not taking a position. You stand for nothing. You fade into the background. Disapproval is proof that you have drawn boundaries. It shows that you occupy space. It means you said, "This is who I am," and when someone resisted, you did not retreat. That is authority. Stop aiming to be the nice person. Aim to be capable. Be the formidable individual. Be driven by a purpose so clear that whether people support you or oppose you has no impact on the result. One of the most common ways people surrender power is through speech. They talk too much. They overshare. They justify themselves. You have an idea, and you tell your friends. You have a plan, and you post it online. You face a challenge, and you vent to colleagues. Each time, you lose energy. Every plan you announce invites interference. I'm starting a business. Really? In this economy? Now their fear becomes yours. You were moving forward, and they added weight to slow you down. Often this does not come from malice but concern. Still, the outcome is the same. Machiavelli understood the value of restraint. A leader does not reveal the full strategy until action is complete. Conflict cannot be avoided. It can only be delayed to someone else's advantage. In personal terms, that conflict is change, the effort to become something different. When you announce your intentions early, you give doubt and resistance time to gather. Living for yourself requires strategic discretion. Keep your plans private. Work quietly. There is a psychological effect known as social reality. When you tell someone what you intend to do, your brain releases dopamine, creating the feeling of completion. This weakens your drive to follow through. There is another issue as well. When you live for others, conversation becomes a request for approval. You explain your choices hoping to hear, "That makes sense." You want permission before moving forward. Stop explaining. Explanations are unnecessary. Leaders do not overjustify. They decide, or they act. If you want to leave your job, do not seek guidance from people afraid to leave theirs. If you want to change your body, do not discuss your discipline with those committed to comfort. Silence protects early ideas from premature judgment. It builds intrigue. When you say less, people fill the gaps with their own assumptions. They pay closer attention. More importantly, silence forces self-reliance. When you stop asking, "What do you think?" you must confront, "What do I think?" At first, this is uncomfortable. The absence of validation is loud. Sit with it. That space is where self-trust develops. That is where resilience is formed. Machiavelli advised consulting no one until you have first consulted yourself. Become a closed system. Information enters, observation, analysis, strategy, but nothing exits until the outcome is complete. When you present a finished result, a new role, a transformed body, a redesigned life, there is nothing to debate. People cannot argue with results. They can only observe them. Debate belongs to planning. Results stand on their own. The mind is now secured. Next is the perimeter. Machiavelli wrote extensively on military structure, warning against mercenaries and auxiliary forces, those who fight for payment or serve another power. He called them dangerous and ineffective, because they lack loyalty. In times of peace, they drain resources. In times of crisis, people abandon you. Look closely at your circle. Who are the mercenaries in your life? The ones who only show up when you have something to offer, when you're driving, paying, or entertaining. Then there are the auxiliaries, the ones from another tribe, another mindset, who pull you into their drama and battles. Living for yourself demands a ruthless review of your alliances. Most people fail here because they're sentimental. They cling to childhood friends who have become toxic, family members who wield guilt as a weapon, or partners who belittle their ambitions. You tell yourself, but we have history. Machiavelli would ask, does history win battles? Strategy wins battles. Strength wins battles. If you are building a new life, you cannot keep the old architects on your payroll. You must perform surgery, and surgery by nature involves cutting. It involves pain. It means removing people you thought were essential but are actually toxic. When you start living for yourself, you will change. Your energy will shift. You'll stop tolerating disrespect. You'll stop engaging in gossip. You'll stop complaining. And people around you will hate it. They'll say you've changed, like it's a crime. Your response? Silence. They are correct. You have changed. You no longer reflect their insecurities. You are no longer the sidekick in their drama. You must be willing to walk alone rather than with those who weigh you down. Machiavelli said, a wise prince should rely on what is his own, not on what is of others. This is emotional self-sufficiency. If friends leave because you set boundaries, let them leave. If family attacks you for choosing a path they don't understand, let them attack. Do not retreat. This is the price of sovereignty. Isolation is not punishment, it's a filter. Removing the mercenaries creates space for the loyal. It creates room for people who respect the new you, not the old you. But you must be willing to sit in an empty room first. You must endure the social winter. Most prefer a warm room with people who secretly despise them rather than a cold room alone with dignity. Be the exception. Choose the cold. Cold preserves. Fake warmth rots. Living for others steals from your future self to pay the debts of present insecurity. Time is the only resource that cannot be returned. Money, power, love, they can all be regained. Time, once gone, is lost forever. Machiavelli was obsessed with timing, the occasion, the window that opens and shuts. When you live for others, you miss the window. Hours are spent listening to friends complain without intent to act. Weekends are wasted at events you dislike, trying to impress people you don't respect. Years are surrendered to careers chosen by others. This is not politeness, it's self-destruction. To live for yourself, you must be ruthless with your time. Ruthless comes from ru, meaning regret. To be ruthless is to act without regret. Learn to say no without guilt. A favor that drains you? A boring social obligation? A request that yields nothing? You don't need to be rude, just unavailable. The prince is not accessible to every peasant at the castle gate. He has guards. He has walls. He chooses who enters. Why is your gate wide open? Why let anyone with a smartphone invade your mind and steal your attention? Build a moat around your time. People will call you selfish or hard to reach. You should be hard to reach. Rare things are valuable. Abundant things are cheap. If you are always available, you are cheap. Understand this. When you say yes to them, you say no to yourself. You sacrifice your craft, health, peace, and vision for their temporary comfort. Machiavelli wrote that a prince should not fear a reputation for stinginess. Excess generosity wastes resources and eventually leads to contempt. But measured restraint preserves your power, enabling greater impact. Be stingy with your time. Hoard it like a dragon hoards gold. Only with surplus time can you invest in what truly matters, in what defines you. Living for yourself means recognizing your death clock. The sand is running out. Do not let others hold the hourglass. What happens when you cut the strings? When you stop performing, oversharing, pleasing, and wasting time, you enter the state of virtue. In Machiavelli's terms, virtue is not Christian virtue. It is prowess, capability, the raw energy to impose your will on the world. It is the ability to face the chaos of fortuna and say, I will shape this. When you live for yourself, you reclaim your virtue. You stop being a victim of circumstance. You stop blaming family, society, or expectations. The only obstacle left is your own will. This is terrifying because blaming others is comfortable. I'm not happy, it's their fault. But when you reclaim the reins, if you fail, it's your responsibility. That weight, that is the weight of the crown. Machiavelli wrote The Prince while in exile. He had endured torture. His title had been taken away. He was living on a farm, poor and cut off from society. By modern standards, he would have been labeled a failure. He had been pushed aside by the Medici. Yet every night he removed his mud-stained work clothes, dressed in formal court attire, and entered his study. He sat at his desk and engaged in dialogue with the thinkers of the past. There, he wrote a book that would later shape history. He lived for himself. He did not wait for the Medici to rehire him. He did not wait for friends to confirm his worth. He produced a masterwork in the quiet of rejection. He transformed isolation into influence. You must do the same. Your life is your study. Your actions are your manuscript. When you stop living for the applause of the present, you begin working for the legacy of the future. You start acting because the work matters, not because it brings rewards. You lift weights not to impress others, but to feel strength course through you. You study not to collect credentials, but to refine your mind into a tool. You create not for approval, but to release what is trapped inside you. This is real freedom. It is the point where you become formidable, because a person who needs nothing from others cannot be controlled by them. If you do not need their money, they cannot purchase you. If you do not need their affection, they cannot manipulate you. If you do not need their approval, they cannot shame you. You become an exception, a disruption in the system of social conditioning. You become the prince. Here is the paradox, the insight Machiavelli understood, but few openly accept. By living for yourself, you actually serve the world better. Those who live only for others grow resentful. They become bitter. Their giving comes with conditions. They are passive-aggressive. Their kindness is a debt that demands repayment. They contaminate relationships with silent expectations. But the person who lives for themselves is complete. Their cup overflows. When they give, it is sincere because they choose to, not because they feel obligated. When they love, it comes from strength, not dependence. A grounded, self-directed individual is a pillar. A weak, approval-seeking individual is a vine. Vines constrict. Pillars hold things up. By prioritizing your mental stability, your resources, and your purpose, you become a stabilizing force in a disordered world. Others rely on you not because you submit, but because you are solid. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must depend on his own arms. When you rely on your own strength, you can protect those who depend on you. When you depend on others, you are exposed, and so are they. Your children need you strong, not merely pleasant. Your partner needs you honest, not endlessly agreeable. The world needs you as you are, not as a copied version of what you think you should be. Living for yourself is the most generous act because it destroys the illusion. It removes the forced smile. It ends the empty agreement. It eliminates the resentment that quietly corrodes families and relationships. In its place, it installs truth. And truth, even when uncomfortable, is the only foundation that lasts. So the question remains, now that you have the keys, now that you see the performance for what it is, now that you understand the risk of the audience and the strength of silence, what will you do when this video ends? The algorithm will offer another distraction. A cat clip, a manufactured outrage, a quick dopamine hit to erase what you just heard. The world is ready to fasten the collar again. Will you allow it, or will you remain in silence? Will you check your phone, scan the names in your inbox, and ask, do I serve you, or do you serve me? The cage door is open. It always has been. The only thing keeping you inside was the fear that nothing existed beyond it. But everything exists out here. There is reality. Machiavelli opened this door 5 centuries ago. He stepped into the cold, dark truth, and he is still standing there, waiting for you to follow. But you must take the first step. You must accept being disliked. You must accept being misunderstood. You must accept truly living. If this shifted your perspective, understand that this is only what can be shared publicly. There are ideas I cannot fully discuss on YouTube without censorship or loss of reach. The algorithm suppresses the most impactful material. That content exists behind the join button. If you are still here, you are not like most viewers. Subscribe if you haven't. But if you want what is not shown, click join and step into the architect level. You will gain access to exclusive and censored videos that explore the deepest layers of the human mind. Most people will not. That is intentional,